Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and we are live tonight. I want to welcome Todd Evans and Dave Lubin here. We are talking our top 10 tracks from Chicago, so let's get started.
Talking bands that no one talks about. Grant's Rock Warehouse.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and like I said, we are live. I've got Todd Evans here and Dave Lubin, and we are talking our top 10 tracks from Chicago. I want to welcome everybody in the chat so far. I'm sure we'll get a lot more. We want to hear from you, and we will keep it loose, and we will be talking to you in the chat. So, gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you. God, I can't talk tonight. I want to welcome you both here tonight. How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
All right. Of course, we cannot not start this without Ernesto. Ernesto's on time tonight, and nice to see you. And Paul Simon. Oh, Dave, we've cut you off. I'll fix that. Some proggy songs. All right. Well, anyway, so we're going to keep it loose. We're going to do our top 10 favorite tracks from Chicago. So tonight I want to start out with Dave. Dave, what is your number 10?
All right. So my number 10 is what I kind of call their big comeback. And I would say that they lost some momentum after the death of Terry Kath. And then suddenly they came shooting out of a cannon in the about 82 with Hard to Say I'm Sorry. Then they had like a whole bunch of mega hits, and they had this huge comeback. I really only picked one song on that list from that era, and that song is Hard Habit to Break. That was my favorite one of that early 80s resurgence. I liked a lot of what they had to offer during that time, but this one was my favorite. And this particular song was nominated for 4 Grammy Awards. Peter Cetera and then Bill Champlin shared the vocals on this, although it's much more Peter Cetera, but and then that was sort of the way that era went, actually. But it works very well. They're contrasting styles in this song. And that was my number 10 from Chicago 17.
Woohoo! I was kind of surprised to see that. I didn't know how much 80s stuff would be on here. Well, this is 78, but you have to admit this is kind of that. This is where it all kind of starts, that whole 80s period,
Yeah, that's actually 80. Chicago 17 is 84.
Oh, what do I have? 78 on there? Boy, oh boy, I'm already wrecking the whole show. Jeez. I wonder how I did that. Oh, well, I cranked these out.
I'm wondering, did I make the mistake? I'm thinking, I know that was the 80s.
It took me a while to notice that. But
all right, so don't pay attention to that year, ladies and gentlemen. All right, well, we're going to throw it over to Todd Evans. Hopefully the next graphic will be okay.
Okay, so I am going to start things off by being very contrarian, and I'm going to pick something that hardly anybody ever talks about. And I'm going to pick a song from Chicago 14. And I don't know how many of you all know about, how much you all know about Chicago 14, but Chicago 14, and when I say you all, I mean the viewers. I know that Dave knows and Grant know about this album, but it is it's produced by Tom Dowd, the last record on Columbia Records, and I'm choosing the leadoff track, Manipulation. And one thing about this record is that it's very, before Chicago goes into their 80s, Chicago 16 and beyond period, this particular album here, much unlike those albums, is very much not necessarily of its time. It's very pure, produced by Tom Dowd. It doesn't have any gimmicks. It's just the band just recorded. It's got a really big drum sound, but it doesn't have a drum sound, which is different from the albums before it, but it doesn't have a drum sound that's sounds like the 80s or anything like that. But this particular song is pretty heavy, and it really kind of cooks. I think that this particular era from 78 to 80 is the best the band ever played. And I mean, I know that's saying a lot because they, obviously the first 5 albums are just stellar playing, but this band live, from everything that I've heard, I never saw them until 1982, but from everything I've heard, this band was playing really well in the late 70s. And Manipulation is just, it's heavier than you'd think. It's got Hammond organ in it. It's got some blistering playing by Danny Seraphine, and a really, really good guitar solo by Chris Pinnock, who was the guy who they had after Donnie Dacus and played through part of the 80s period. And I could not put Manipulation on there because when I heard that track in 1980, I thought, oh, wow, this is going to be huge. And of course, I was very, very wrong. But I think this album is way underrated, and so I went with Manipulation.
That's good. You know, this record, Rolling Stone album guy gave it 1 star.
Yeah, that's because they didn't listen to it.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
But of all the Chicago records, this you hardly ever would ever see this used.
No.
Or heck new. It probably didn't sell hardly at all.
No, it didn't. It didn't. There was no promotional push behind it.
Yeah. And were there any singles released from it?
Yeah, there were. Let me see if I can. I believe there were 2. I believe that they were "Song for You," which is a satira ballad, and "Thunder and Lightning." I think those were the singles, and I think "Thunder and Lightning" got to like number 38 or something like that. But,
yeah. All right. Cool.
We'll talk more about it later. Spoiler alert.
Could someone help Rand with the time? He's trying to figure. Does anybody really know what time it is? Because he doesn't. Where's DC? I really like a lot of their deep tracks, but for me, their singles of the early to mid 70s are stellar.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of those.
We'll get there. Oh, D Rocker, Make Me Smile off of 2. All right. D Rocker, good evening all again. Number 10, Baby, What a Big Surprise. That's a good one. There's a lot of great tracks,
like that one.
But we're keeping it. We'll see what we've got. We've got a lot more coming up because we're going to throw it over to Dave Lubin and get his number 9. Dave, what's your number 9?
So number 9, I'm going to go 1 year before you, and I'm going to go off the Hot Streets album. I like that album well enough. That was Donnie Dacus replacing Terry Katz very all but briefly. Apparently the band didn't get along with him as per their documentary I once watched. Nevertheless, he does some fantastic guitar work on this particular song. My first time seeing Chicago was in 1979 at the Montreal Forum, and this was the song that opened the Forum. That opened the concert. It was a great song to open the concert with. They've used this song at the time. They used to use the intro a lot for intro to various sports things like NBA games and such. Interestingly enough, the brass sound from this particular song is actually inspired by the Bee Gees song "Tragedy." I can hear that a little bit. And I just find this is just a great upbeat song. I think it's kind of a forgotten one. It peaked at number 14 on Billboard, but you don't hear that too often anymore. But still one of my favorites. Yeah. And as I said, I actually like that Hot Streets album pretty well. But it's definitely my favorite song on that album. It's the one that opens the album.
Yeah, I think that record sold pretty well back in the day from what I remember. Because I remember when I was a kid, it was like everywhere, But live again, I don't really recall hearing that much anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, No Cow Lovers. I think that's on that one. I have to look back.
Yeah, and I used to think that was a more successful single, but I don't think it was. I don't think it got. I could be wrong about that. I don't know if anybody has stats in front of them, but did you say Alive Again got to number 12?
Yeah, right? Alive Again got to number 14, and then
14,
No Cow Lovers, and then they had a couple other like kind of minor. Take a Chance was a song that was on that one.
Yeah,
and,
Gone. Long Gone was released in '79. So
it's a solid album, but that's the only one that really stands out. Was Alive Again, but I think, it's a great song, I think.
Well, what I remember about that song is that my band director when I was in high school really liked Chicago, and this album came out when I was in the 9th grade, and I remember we didn't have band one day because the band director rolled in the cart with the TV and the big 3/4-inch video machine, and he had recorded Chicago playing Live Again on TV. I don't know what show it was on, but they did it on television, and he played it for us. He thought it was that important that Chicago had something coming out after Terry Kath's death, that we didn't have class and we watched the performance instead.
That's incredible.
So that's my memory of it.
So he drug that 3/4 inch deck home and recorded it.
He drug it home and recorded it, and then brought it back and showed it to us.
I love it. I love it. That is so cool.
It sounded great live. I'll tell you that. It got that concert going. And yeah.
All right. Excellent, Dave. All right, Todd, what's your number 9?
All right. Perfect segue. I'm going to choose another song from this album. And I'm going to choose the title track, Hot Streets, written by Robert Lamb. I've always thought this was a way underrated track. It starts with the classic Robert Lamb sounding kind of rhythmic piano, great smooth vocal by Robert. It's got a Walt Paradiser flute solo in it, probably his best flute solo. Great horn arrangement. This song, I think, is actually as good as earlier 70s Chicago songs ever were. I think it's right up there with them. I think nobody really ever talks about this song, which I always think is kind of strange. And one of the things that I kind of want to talk about, since we're on the subject of Hot Streets, is that, Donnie Dacus didn't look like Terry Kath, and he wasn't the same kind of personality that Terry Kath was. And supposedly when he went on stage, he was really flamboyant, kind of stole the show, and would like fall down on the ground and all that kind of stuff, and was just a real showboat kind of guy. But as a guitarist, he actually doesn't play that differently than Terry Kath would have, as far as style is concerned. Now, he's not as good as Terry Kath, but he is very, very good. And the style, especially in the solos, is not terribly different. Now, that's just my opinion. I tend to kind of boost late 70s Chicago more than most people. But I think that Donnie's a great player. And the last thing I want to say about this song is that when you think about what great Chicago songs are, the one thing that I look at is that there's a Russian band called Leonid and Friends who does Chicago covers, and they put them on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And I always look at the songs that they choose to cover, and they chose to make a cover of this song. And so that tells me a lot about, I'm not the only Chicago fan that really likes this song. So Hot Streets is my number 9.
Actually, it's a good song.
Yeah.
Good choice. I like that one.
Great performance.
Excellent. Let's see. What are people saying? George, hello, fellow Chicago fans, and I have been a fan since I was 11. Yes, it was the David Foster era, but when I discovered the Terry Kath era, heck yeah. Brian McFadden likes that Chocolate Bar album. Well, good. That's awesome. What else we got? Oh, DC, his first concert was Chicago in 1971.
Oh, wow.
The Pointer Sisters opened.
That's great.
Oh,
that is great.
Wonder where he was.
Carol Arthur saying hello. I was
Hi,
like,
Carol.
Oh, there she is.
Hey.
All right, everybody. Let's get to our number 8. Dave, I'm going to throw it over to you. What's your number 8?
Okay, I'm going to go all the way to Chicago 19, and I'm going to do the first. I'll give you one little preview. This isn't going to be the last time you're going to hear from this one. There's something about that album. I keep wanting to hear some songs. Anyway, we'll start off with the huge hit single that was number 1 for the year on Billboard that year, and that was "Look Away." Now, often when I'm doing a top 10 list, I kind of like to discard songs that weren't written by the band. I can't do that here because I guess the song really was written for the band. It was written by hitmaker Diane Warren. There's something about this song. It's like one of those things that you can just relate to. Everybody had, or a lot of people had that relationship of somebody who, you just don't want to run into them after, if it's too soon afterwards, and that's what this song's about. Again, you got Bill Chaplin singing this, and boy, he sings these songs with so much power. Like, I really believe that, he's into this. It's like, he doesn't want to see that person. He doesn't want to deal with them. Interesting note about this song was actually offered to Cheap Trick, and Cheap Trick went with another song, The Flame. Not a bad choice for them. So worked out great. Both bands did an A+ job. And again, this is one of those songs. Maybe if you're a Chicago snob, there might be a bit of a sellout, but I thought it was great. And again, was #1 song of the year. So somebody agreed with me that it was a great song.
Yeah, number one, that was really huge. And people have different opinions about the songs that are not written by them, and I'm not crazy about that. I will be honest and say I'm not crazy about that. But if you're going to have somebody write songs for you, it should be somebody as good as Diane Warren. And I recently saw an interview with Bill Champlin that was done a couple of years ago, and he says that that he claims that the band didn't like him, and that the reason that they kept him around so long is because of Look Away, because it went to #1, and he thinks that the band was like, oh God, we'll never get rid of that guy now. And I thought that was interesting.
But he was around since the early '80s, so there was it was 8 or 9 years before that. So
yeah. But yeah, it's a good song, and there are other Diane Warren songs that she wrote for Chicago that I think are also good.
So I'm just curious, did the record company, how did Chicago, okay, we always know that Chicago was very commercial in the 80s. And I know it took place over a period of time, but did the record company have anything to do with having these outside writers?
Yes.
You guys know anything about that? How did that all come about? I mean, how did they morph into this hit-making machine?
Well, they found themselves without a label, because what happened was before they made Chicago 14 in 1980, they signed a deal that secured them $1 million before they even start, to make a record. And so it was this really expensive deal. And so when Chicago 14 didn't pan out, the Columbia paid them to get out of the contract. And and in a way, it's in my opinion, it's Columbia Records' fault, but it's also, and the band will say this. I've heard some guys in the band say, "Well, that was our fault too, because we signed that deal, and it kind of put a lot of pressure on us." But they they shopped around, and they got David Foster to produce Chicago 16, and David Foster heard what they had and told him to throw it all away and start over.
Wow!
So to me, I want to hear what they threw away.
What do you think that'll ever
because
come
that
out?
means 10 songs or so that were written by them that Foster told them to toss. I assume a couple of those ended up on 16, but yeah, a lot of pressure, and basically what they were thinking was, let's not make a Chicago record, let's make a hit record.
Right.
David Foster was very into reviving.
Yes,
back in the early '80s, and he was a part of a number of revivals of people kind of disappeared, and then wait a minute, they're back again and they're having hit songs. Yeah, and Chicago was probably his #1, but I can think of a couple. I think he might. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was behind the revival of Dionne Warwick.
I think he was. Yeah.
And he worked with the Tubes, and he got a couple of hits for the Tubes. So
nobody thought the Tubes were going to have hit records until he got a hold of them.
I like those David Foster Tubes albums.
I do too.
I don't know.
It's funny. I just recently got the Daryl Hall and John Oates album, Along the Red Ledge. And I was listening to it, and it's a David Foster production. And what is that, 1976, 1978?
I think it's 78.
Like 78. And completely not like Chicago 16. Mm-hmm. Not any, no synth bass, no drum machine, just a pure rock and roll recording. And he was good at that, too. So before he had this formula of what he did for everyone else, he actually was a good producer before that.
It's a Laugh is on that album. That's a great record. That's
a good
Hall & Oates album.
It is.
He was actually behind Paul Anka's last hit, Hold Me Till the Morning Comes, and who was doing the backup vocals on that particular song was Peter Cetera.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
There you go.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
All right, cool. Well, Todd, go ahead. Give us your next one.
Okay, well, I know that everybody who's watching is waiting for us to go back to here to the early material, and I'm going to go with Beginnings as number 8. And the reason I know you might think that maybe should be higher. But there's another song. I'll get another spoiler alert from this album that's higher. But Beginnings is really cool because it written by Robert Land. It starts out with a bass of acoustic guitar, which is probably really one of the only acoustic moments on the album, unless you count the piano in some of the other songs. But the bass and the drums, this is where you get this really perfect blend of Danny Seraphine and Peter Cetera. And this is kind of where it starts on introduction, but Beginnings is a really great example of it. Very fluid playing by them. A lot of drum fills, but it doesn't sound like, some drummers can play a lot of drum fills and you kind of lose the center of the song, but Danny's not like that. His playing is very fluid, and Peter Cetera is one of the best bass players in the world, and he's really good at writing bass parts. Mm-hmm. And so that's what Beginnings has. It's got, and you also hear in Beginnings the blend of the trumpet and the alto saxophone, which makes it sound like the horn section is bigger than it is. And you really have to be a good player to be able to play in unison like the way they do, and you've got to have great, you got to stay in tune, and they actually really do that to where it sounds like it's maybe 3 or 4 trumpets, but it's really trumpet and alto saxophone, and you get that in this song a lot. And this song has a completely unique song structure. It's not verse chorus bridge solo chorus. It's just. It doesn't, I mean, it almost doesn't, the structure is just very, very different. It's got this rhythm section break in the middle of it. And then the intensity increases in Robert's vocal. And then it really goes somewhere from there. And of course you get James Pankow, the rock and roll trombone player. And you've got this great duet between him and Lee Linnane on the trumpet. And it's just a really cool song. I mean, it's easy to think of Beginnings and go, oh yeah, that's a great song. But if you think about it, there really aren't very many songs like it. It doesn't have the structure of it is very unique. And so that's my number 8.
Yeah, I think we're going to find out that I kind of like that one too, but we'll
get there. Yeah. There's Daddy Bog. Hey, Daddy Bog, thanks for coming. DC gives a thumbs up for Beginnings. Air Rock, Chicago Transit Authority is my favorite Chicago record. Jason Rojas, I heard that Chicago wanted David Foster for 13 or 14, but he was
I've heard
busy.
That too.
So when they got Foster for 16, the band rebelled against him. But he got him back on the charts, so that's a good thing.
I think whenever you tell a band that they have, especially a band that's got one of the best rhythm sections of all time, that you're just going to replace them with tech, that I'm sure that there were probably some arguments about that.
Yeah, I do want to thank everybody for coming on and chatting in the chat. I'm trying to get through them. I might not get all of you, but I do appreciate everybody coming on and keeping it interactive. This is what I like. D-Rocker, number 7, If You Leave Me Now, off a 10. Air Rock, of course, likes the Tubes. Who doesn't? Chuck, hey, how are you? Peter Cetera. Paul Simon loves the Tubes. Of course you do, Paul. Along the Red Ledge is awesome. Yes.
That's a kind of a proggy album. There's a lot of the deep cuts on Along the Red Ledge are pretty kind of proggy.
Really, DC, the Grand Funk song Running is what they would sound like if they did a duet with Chicago. I don't know about that. Michael Esposito. I remember that TV special they did with Anne Murray. Oh, Byron, I'm catching up here. I have Chicago 14, but I don't like it. For God's sakes.
I'm almost surprised that Byron doesn't like it because it's real. It's really a real rock album for them.
Wow, Chuck, you saw Bill in concert last month? How cool is that? I suppose Bill's out touring still. I don't know. AZ Mick, hey, how's it going? Okay, that 1971 show was at Cleveland Public Hall. The Pointer Sisters were old school jazz at that point.
Yep. Piano,
drums, and stand-up bass with their accompaniment. Oh, that is freaking great. All right, well, let's keep going. I'm going too fast, gentlemen. All right, we are at number 7. Dave, are you ready?
Okay, now I'm ready to go back to that Chicago Transit Authority album, and I'm going to go with does anybody really know what time it is? Somebody in the chat section was worried that we were going to leave that one out. Well, don't worry. It's that time for that song. Robert Lamb, penned and written. It's got that wonderful, great instrumental intro and horns. I mean, as I said, there's different. It's almost like there's a few different Chicagos. When I'm talking 80s Chicago and I'm talking 70s Chicago, there's a very distinctly different sound. But it's in the early 70s you really get the full feel of that, that big band sound with all the horns and the brass and then mixing in the rock guitar sound, and then you've got the Robert Lamb piano going. Yep. But no, Robert Lamb, Peter Cetera, I think you would probably say is the main lead vocal for Chicago. But Robert Lamb, when he does a song, he does it great. Beginnings, which we just talked about, and then this one. Interesting thing about this song, it didn't become a hit until 1970, so 3 years after the album. I think the album was replayed. Was the album released in 69? It was released. Okay, 70,
I think so.
All right, so it took about a year or so. But anyway, it did get to number 7, and pretty much a staple in at least the concerts that I saw.
Yeah, I've got an original 2-eye of that.
Yeah, me too.
All right. But isn't the original cover with the little logo?
Yeah, I just showed the back.
Yeah, but it is the little.
That's the back of it. Yeah.
But I've got a 2-eye of that, and man, it sounds great, and it's mint. I don't know why, but if back in the we're on a vinyl.
Oh, well, here, as long as you mentioned that,
pull it out, show it to everybody what a 2-eye looks like. So we're talking like the Columbia label with the 2 Columbia logos. That's a 2-eye.
There is a 2-eye of this. There's a 2-eye of Chicago 2, which I also have.
Yeah.
There is not a 2-eye of Chicago 3.
But you remember back in the 90s, Todd? Well, Dave, you might remember too, but you could find Chicago was plentiful in the bins. You could find 2-eyes, plenty of Chicago, those first 2 albums. I don't know what it looks like now, if there's a lot of them, but boy, back in the day, you could find them.
And I really only have that for collector's purposes. The ones that aren't 2-eye, they also sound great. There's no such thing as a pressing of CTA that doesn't sound great. They all do.
Yeah, they all sound great. I think the vinyl sounds better than the CD. I will say that. All right.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. They have never done the CD right for that. So yeah.
But I think probably the first one, the Japanese, where it's on it's in a Fat Boy case, the 2 CD. That's the one I've got. Anyway, there we went on a vinyl tangent, ladies and gentlemen. Right. All right. Thank you, Dave. That was good. Now, Todd, what's your number 7?
Okay, my number 7 is really going to surprise a lot of people. And my number 7 is Bigger Than Elvis from Stone of Sisyphus, which is the album that was supposed to come out after 21. Didn't come out till many years later. Now, I love this song, and I'm going to say why in a minute. But I will go on to say that I actually don't think that Stone of Sisyphus is that great of an album. I think that it suffers from sounding very 90s, and considering it came out in 2008, I think there's a lot of it that really it's less commercial than 18, 19, and 21, but I don't think that some of the songs are not as good, and I don't like the way it sounds. But Bigger Than Elvis is a really spectacular song, written by Jason Scheff, Peter Wolf, and Ina Wolf. It's his tribute to his father, Jerry Scheff. And Jerry Scheff was the bass player for Elvis Presley. And he went on to do other things. He's played with Elvis Costello. In fact, I saw him in 1986 with Elvis Costello.
Cool.
And but it's a really nice tribute to his father. He plays Jerry Scheff plays bass on it, and the lyrics are just really great. He says, "I saw you on TV, the king you were to me." It's really a beautiful song, and it features the Jordanaires. And the amazing thing about that was the quartet that sang with Elvis. The amazing thing about that is when they put them on this song, they made them sound like they actually did when they sang with Elvis. And man, there's a spectacular key change in this song. It's sung beautifully. And, Chicago was getting known for doing a lot of ballads, a lot of power ballads, but this one is really different. This one really has some weight to it. You kind of have to, when you listen to the song, you really kind of got to take your cool hat off, and you got to just let the sentimentality appeal to you. And if you do that, this is a very moving song, and it's my number 7.
That's good. I have a quick question though, since we are learning here. I am learning, people. Why did this album not come out till 2008?
The record company rejected it. And I want to say, I don't know whether or not they were still signed to Reprise at this time. I think they were, but the record company rejected it, and they told them to go back and regroup. And then they got Giant. They tried to do it. I mean, there is actually a version of this album that was floating around. I had it,
like a bootleg or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And when they eventually signed to Giant, which is a smaller Warner label, they wanted to put this out, and Giant had an idea for them. Giant said that they wanted them to make the big band album, and which is actually, we could talk about that in another show. Pretty good album, but Chicago said, "Well, we really want to release Stone of Sisyphus," and Giant said, "Do the big band album first, and then we'll release Stone of Sisyphus," which they didn't do.
Oh.
It took Rhino in 2008 to release Stone of Sisyphus. And but yeah, that was kind of the deal, was that they really wanted to do it. And I mean, it's really kind of a sad story. They really felt at the time that they were really doing something that they wanted to do without any outside without as much outside interference as they usually have from the record company. And their guitarist at the time, Dwayne Bailey, they made him a full-time member, and he had a lot of input to this album, and so he was very depressed that the album didn't get made. So yeah,
that sucks. All right, let's see what the peanut gallery. Oh, wait, holy crap. Let me look here. Oh,
George has got a good comment that I really like about Chicago 13 and 14. I don't want to make you bounce around.
We're gonna look at it.
Yeah.
Chicago 13 and 14 have totally grown on me in the last year. They are darn good records.
I was surprised at how much 13. I've always liked 13, but 13 has raised in stature in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, Jason says that Warner Reprise thought that the Stone wasn't commercial enough. They were right. I mean,
yeah, it's weird. I mean, I hate that they didn't release it. They didn't let them release it, but at the same time, it's not very marketable. But in my opinion,
Daddy Buck, check out my comment above. Okay. Oh my. Oh, this one. Oh, they came up with the.
Oh yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, Dean Torrance. He's a graphic designer. Well, in between being a Jan and Dean member, came up with the Chicago using the Coca-Cola script C. Huh, I'll be damned. All right, cool. What else we got? The Warner years were not their best, but there are some great, deep, strong cuts there. Yeah. And Ressa says, Byron, I heard that and read that Goodwill is going to stop selling CDs. Oh no, my goodness. Talking about all kinds of stuff. All right, let's go to Dave. Dave, what's your next one?
All right, I'm going back to Chicago 19. There's some songs I really like on this one, and I'm going with You're Not Alone. So this album's pretty well represented. Again, Bill Chapman just really stepped up to the plate after Peter Cetera left the band and did great stuff. It's kind of interesting. His vocal style is so different. It's like Peter Cetera is sort of that more higher pitch kind of rock. I don't know where I don't know if I'd put it in the Steve Perry type of high pitch, but Bill Chapman is more of a strong, powerful vocal. It's kind of interesting when this album, I forget Peter Cetera is not even a part of it. And it's amazing they were able to get out of that era so seamlessly, at least for this particular album. I think about, bands that had to change singers on the fly and did it and still continued to have big hits. So the one that came to mind is Genesis. They went from Peter Gabriel to Phil Collins, became bigger than ever. not a journey, but they don't really count because nobody was listening to them until Steve Perry got there. So anyway, he just does again. He just sings this strong. He sings this song really with that strong voice, and it's just another one of those songs that I can just listen to it over and over again. It's just I just want to crank it up.
So you don't miss Peter Cetera in this version of Chicago?
I mean, when I go through my list, there's Peter Cetera songs all over. That's actually kind of interesting. He's definitely there, but I've got a good mixture of lead vocalists in my in my list here. So that hey, Peter Cetera, great vocalist. He did some great solo work.
Yeah.
But for this particular album, you're right. I didn't miss him. As a matter of fact, I thought it was kind of a big for me, and particularly, it was a big comeback album.
Yeah.
And it was probably, they had three top 10 hits on this one. So
yeah, the interesting thing about that album is that the reason that they made it is that Peter released an album, or he was about to release an album. I'm not sure which one it would have been, but I think it might have been that. I think it might have been One More Story, or the one after that. But Danny was like, we've got to get into the studio and make an album. We have to put something out there because Peter's going to have an album out. And so they decided that was a good idea. And this was the first album in a while where Danny Seraphine actually played the drums. And so he went from that to a year or two later getting canned. I meant to bring it over here. It's on my shelf back there. Danny Seraphine wrote a book called Street Player, My Chicago Story. And if you want to know what happened to them, especially in the late 70s and the 80s, that's a really good book, and I recommend it.
Yeah, I remember, did I see the documentary? It was on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I remember, I found out some of that kind of stuff. The one thing with these songs is that it's when we're talking about these songs that got released in 1988, it's a very different sound than the ones in the early 70s. It is more pop focused. But I'm okay with that. I have no shame to tell you I like pop songs, but I like hard rock songs. I like all kinds of stuff. So.
And a lot of people, especially in the rock realm, don't care for the producer, Ron Nevison, but I actually like Ron Nevison. So I think 19 is a really good sounding album.
I think Ron Nevison's fine. I like what he did with Jefferson Starship. I don't know. He did some great stuff with the Babies.
Some people don't like what he did with Heart, but
but don't forget that Heart era. Some people like 1985 Heart. Some people don't.
Saved them, and all of his productions sound really good, and I think 19 sounds really good. So.
Yeah, that was another big revival band.
Yeah,
in the 80s. Yeah,
it was that era. A lot of these 70s bands could not make that transition.
Right.
We've seen this over and over again with different bands going through their careers where they, you have to hand it to Heart. They were able to do it, but I will say this: Aerosmith was the band that made that transition the easiest, because you can still listen to a lot of that Aerosmith stuff, though some people don't like it. Some people do. That Aerosmith stuff's really not all that bad, that later stuff. I'm just saying, throwing it out there. All right, Todd.
They just couldn't keep that going, in my opinion.
Right. Well, but they had a rebirth, and they were probably bigger than they ever were. So you have
I think for sure.
Yeah.
Even got the ride in they got the ride in one of the Disney parks. It's a great ride.
That's right. I remember that.
It's a great ride if you've never been on it.
You've made it if you have a ride in a Disney park. All right, Todd, what's your number 6?
All right, my number 6 is Now That You've Gone from Chicago 5. Rand said something about proggy Chicago songs. I think this is definitely one. Written by James Pankow, starts with a tom-tom drum pattern, a really busy pattern, features the drums really heavily throughout. This is a song that I didn't discover until like 10 years ago. Like when I was listening to Chicago when I was in high school, and that song just kind of went right past me. Great Terry Gath lead vocal, possibly his best lead vocal, I think. Incredible, outstanding horn arrangement. Another song with a really strange structure. It doesn't do what you think it's going to do. And it's got all kinds of tempo changes. Walter Parasater's sax solo is probably his finest moment in the band. And the song just really cooks. I mean, it ends with Parasater's solo, and then it goes into this really great, just really hot horn arrangement, and it's just it's awesome. If you haven't listened to Now That You've Gone, it sits on the album right before Dialogue Part 1 and 2, and man, is it good. So that's my number 6.
Excellent. That's good. D-Rock, our number 4, questions 67 and 80 and 68. Yeah, that's good. Here, George says Ron Nevison, absolutely. Jefferson Starship, UFO, The Babies, and Survivor. That's right, Survivor, his best work. Brian says trumpets in Aerosmith turn people off. I don't know, but if you think about it, Brian, Aerosmith always had brass in their songs. Even in that 70s stuff, they always had it. It's not that much different.
That reminds me, if you don't mind me going on a tangent, I read the funniest thing. It's like in Facebook comments. If anybody's familiar with the band Haken, they're like a prog metal band, a pretty intense band, and they had a song on their album Vector that had a trumpet solo in it. And somebody said on the Haken fan page on Facebook, trumpets don't belong in prog metal. Jazz trumpets, and everybody just piled on this guy, and my comment was, "Are jazz trumpets okay in a jazz trumpet album?" So yeah, there is a real thing. People get some rock purists get upset because there's brass instruments. Yeah,
I love Little Miss Lovin' on Hot Streets. The Bee Gees on background vocals.
Me too.
All right, nice. Airrock, he likes that. Chuck has no shame in his Chicago big game.
Good.
That's good. Nevison has come up a bunch of times with us. God, I can't talk tonight. Nevison has come up a bunch of times with us lately. I'm a fan of a lot of what he did. Yeah.
Well, I like Kiss Crazy Nights, so I'm the guy who likes that particular album produced by Ron Nevison. So there you go. All right,
Chris Crazy. I cannot talk at all tonight. Jesus. All right, Dave, you're up. What's your number 5?
I got one more from Chicago 19, and then I promise, folks, we're getting to the classics. Actually, I was when reading the comments, there was 2 songs when we talked about the honorable mentions that I was like, really? I was like forever trying to get question 67 and 68 and Saturday in the Park in this list, but I could only do 10, so it was kind of unfortunate. But shout out to those people. Those are excellent songs, both of them. Anyway, number 5, another power ballad, and it was my favorite power ballad from the Chicago 19 album. I Don't Want to Live Without Your Love Again. Got Bill Chapman with that strong vocals. He crushes this ballad. I mean, I'm hearing this guy sing this, and I totally believe that he wants to keep this woman by his side. I'm taken seriously. Again, I don't like putting songs on the list that weren't written by the band, but again, I just really have always really liked this one. This one was written by Diane Warren, and then Albert Hammond. Actually, when I was looking back, I said, that's right, Albert Hammond. I always thought of him as just kind of that one-hit wonder for It Never Rains in Southern California, but then I kind of did a little bit of research, and hey, this guy, aside from that one-hit wonder song that he actually sung, he penned quite a few hits as well. But anyway, yeah, this is a great power ballad, and rest easy, folks. The classics are coming.
Well, what I've learned from this show is that Dave really likes Chicago 19. I've learned. That's what I've learned. All right, Todd, what's your number?
All right, number 5. I'm going back to 14. And I'm going to talk about a song that nobody ever talks about. It's completely forgotten. And it's called Where Did the Lovin' Go? It's written by Peter Cetera. It's a ballad, but it kind of rocks. And I think it's one of Peter Cetera's best songs. And it's got all kinds of interesting things happening in it. It's got this Strawberry Fields kind of flute theme that goes underneath the verse. And then so you've got the verse, and then you've got a little guitar melody instead of and then goes into the second verse. And then there's a bridge that's like this really super melodic thing happening with really impassioned vocals by Peter. And then after the bridge, there's like another bridge that's like a little guitar melody. It's not really a solo, but it's just like a little guitar melody. And then it's followed by the repeat of the original bridge. So the bridge of this song has a bridge. And
is that legal?
It's really cool. It's really a cool song. And, you know, it gets perceived as a ballad, so nobody really pays much attention to it. And it's got this really kind of majestic, like horn intro the song does. And then the outro is just a reprise of the intro. Just a brilliant song from a songwriting perspective. And I just love it. And I think it's one of their best songs. And it's completely ignored. Nobody even knows anything about that song.
Todd, you keep talking about this record. You're making me want to seek it out at this point.
It's really good.
And Chicago 19.
It's really good.
I was counting on Todd for the deep tracks. He's not disappointing me. So he's giving me some stuff to look back on.
All right, that's cool, Todd. All right, I'm sold. Dave, what's your next one off of 19?
Okay, okay, I'm done with 19. Now
okay, I'm just joking.
Now we'll start getting into the classics. Okay, a song that I consider Chicago's catchiest song, and boy, I remember as a youth hearing this song. I couldn't get this song out of my head, and that's "Baby What a Big Surprise" from Chicago 11. Somebody mentioned that one in the chats. It's actually, you know, Chicago has like very complex songs, you know, having to mix in all the band and everything else. This one's one of their simpler songs, but it's just so damn catchy. And I've never grown tired of this thing. I mean, it's always been one of my absolute favorite songs of all time. It's upbeat, it's fun. Reached number 4 on Billboard. A couple notes about this song. Carl Wilson actually did some backup vocals on it. So did Tim Cetera. And it is the last top 10 song that featured the late, great Terry Kath.
Wow. Yeah, great song. It still stands up. In fact, this song, I can listen to it over and over again.
Yeah.
And if it pops on the radio or something, I won't turn it off.
It was one of those songs that the very first time I heard it, I liked it. Like there was no repeated listenings. And I remember when we got the album in the house, I mean, I just kept playing this song. Oh, I mean, I had my brothers had these big fancy stereos because I'm the youngest of 3, but I can't remember. I'm going to guess it was the middle brother that purchased it, but I just remember it was always in my room and I was constantly like playing this song over and over and over and over again.
I used to borrow my sister's Chicago records. So that was my older sister.
See. Bombastic song, says Brian. This is the last. What is that? X1. What is that?
That's 14, right?
14. If I only could count.
Yeah.
The last classic Chicago sound before David Foster. Yeah, baby. What a big surprise is great. All right. I probably, yes, Paul. Maybe I'll see it this weekend.
If we can find it.
If we can find it. That song is very reminiscent of, I remember the feeling from Chicago 17 something is. I can't keep track. You guys are really pouring on.
He says later, where did the lovin' go? That is. And
okay. All right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If anybody wants to hear how great Terry Kath was, listen to Palm 58 on the Chicago Transit Authority record. All right, cool. All right, continuing on.
I promise I'll honor Terry Kath. I promise.
Oh, I'm sure. All right, Todd, what's your next?
You know, it's interesting. I wanted to say one thing about Chicago 11 before we moved on, since the picture of that is up. I particularly think, and you guys can discuss this later, but I think that Chicago 11 it starts out with 2 really great tracks. It starts out with Mississippi Delta City Blues, and then Baby What a Big Surprise. Then it ends with Little One, which is another great track. But in the middle of it, I think it loses its way, like in a really big way. Like when it came out in the late 70s, I really liked it as an album, but older me feels like it starts strong and it ends strong, and it just kind of loses its way in the middle. But anyway, I just wanted to say that because I saw the album cover and it made me think of that.
Well, All Music gave this a 4 out of 5. So
What, the album?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's this Vote for Me, and there's a song that James Pankow sings, and there's a song that Leela Nain sings, and so it just kind of, it's a little weak in the middle. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
Still a good record.
It is.
All right.
Number 4, Dialogue Parts 1 and 2. And if you're saying that I'm cheating by doing 2 different tracks, then I'll just go with Dialogue Part 1. I think that this song, written by Robert Lamb, it's the best the rhythm section Peter and Danny ever sounded on record, which is saying a lot because they sounded very, very good very often. But the cool thing about this song is that well, first of all, as far as the first part of it is concerned, a lot of stuff happens in just 2 minutes and 57 seconds. You have this conversation between Terry Kath on the left and Peter, not just on the right, but in the center right of your ears, which I think is very, very cool. It's supposed to be a conversation between somebody who's very connected about what's going on in the world in the late 60s and early 70s. And then Peter, somebody who's more easygoing, telling him, you know, I don't really think about that stuff all that much. But the great thing about the song is they get to communicate a whole bunch of political views in a way that seems totally friendly and non-confrontational. Like they got to say what they wanted to say, but you don't come away from it feeling like they're trying to try to hit you with something really hard. And I think that the way that they did that is just really skillful, and it's just really melodically good and played really well. And like I said, I think that's the best that Peter and Danny sound in that band. And so I just think it's a monster track. And so number 4 is Dialogue.
Yeah, actually, I really like that one too.
Wow. Love it. All right. Dave, we're on to number 3.
Okay, so now is when I get to Beginnings. So we go back to the beginning. So Beginnings made this twice. I can't remember. I think it was number 8 or so for Todd.
For me, yeah.
Number 3 for me. I mean, you spoke about it, but yeah, there's again everything about this song is excellent. It's a Robert Lamb pen song, and you know, I kind of like the fact that it is the beginning, and it's just a representation of everything great that this band has to offer with all those, you know, I mean, it's just outstanding musicians mixing the big band with the rock guitar, the drums. You got a little bit of everything in this song. And actually, I remember this particular song being played at that concert. I'm referring to it a few times because it was one of the first concerts I'd ever seen. Not the first. The first was the Beach Boys, but this was they were the second rock band. And I remember I was kind of like, they opened with Alive Again, and then, you know, they did a few songs. I was waiting for, okay, when are you going to get to those songs from those first 2 albums? And this was the first one they played, and it was just kind of an exciting moment for me. So it just makes me think back that, okay, finally they played one of the really old ones.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first really old one they played. I think, you know, they had played like some of I can't remember I just remember Live Again was first, a few songs, and then they got to this one. I was like, okay, good.
Excellent. DC says, my siblings were always borrowing my albums. They never bought any. Bastards. D-Rock. Oh, his number 2. Does anybody really know what time it is? Yeah, it's good. We might hit that. I don't know.
That was number 7 for me.
Yeah, that was
was
number 7.
It's hard for me to keep track. Wishing You were here with Carl Wilson, Mike Love, and Al Jardine. Oh, yeah, that's a classic. God,
Actually,
when they sing backgrounds on that, it's incredible. What's that?
So I mentioned the second time I saw Chicago it was at the exhibition in Toronto, and that's like their version of kind of the, I guess, a state fair concert. Mm-hmm. And the bands got together and they played various songs together, and of course that was one of the songs they played together because the Beach Boys did actually sing background for that song in the studio. Another song I remember they did really well together was Darlin'.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, from
the
Seven.
song "Darlin" by the Beach Boys. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That "Darlin."
Beach Boys song "Darlin," but they did "Darlin," but then Chicago was on there, and then they added the brass band effects to the song, and it sounded terrific. I remember that one.
"Darlin" from Wild Honey.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was thinking that was Pet Sounds, but okay.
Nah, it's too. Pet Sounds is too early. All right, George. Robert Land doesn't get enough love. He's such an essential member of Chicago after all these years.
Yeah,
but I really like Robert Lamb on those early albums.
Yeah,
and twice. I've got 2 Robert Lambs on here. So.
He had a really rough time in the early '80s during that David Foster period, and you can tell he's missing. You can tell he's not. I
love Robert Lamb.
Yeah,
Eric, I'm friends with Al Jardine on Facebook and some former backup band members. Nice.
Cool.
Chuck, I saw the tour Chicago did with the Beach Boys in the late 80s, and I was so disappointed they didn't do Wishing You Were Here live.
That's interesting.
God, you would think that they would play that.
Yeah, I know. That's weird. That is odd. That's very strange.
Yeah, Darlin's
they definitely did it when I saw it.
They did that song when I saw Chicago. Nice. Well, have you ever heard the version of Darlin did? I don't know if it's a Danny Hutton demo. Or wait a minute. Danny Hutton's band before 3 Dog Night, because Brian Wilson gave that to what was his band? Oh, someone in the comments.
I can't think of it.
But
I know what you're talking about.
Oh, there we go. It was pre 3 Dog Night. It'll come to me. All right. I heard Wishing You Were Here in concert with America doing vocals with Chicago. That would be cool. I've only seen a Chicago 18, probably the last one on 8-track. That's probably the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Danny Hutton called everyone Darlin, so Brian Wilson wrote the song. Yeah. Oh, but Daddy Bog, what was the name of the band that Danny Hutton was in that they did a version of that? And Brian Wilson produced it. Put it in the comment. All right, let's keep going, gentlemen. We are getting almost there. Todd, what's your number 3?
Okay, this is going to be. I'm going to be true to my picking deep cuts here, and I'm going to talk about from this album, Chicago 8, which, by the way, is a pretty good album, and it's got a lot of Terry Kath playing on it, and nobody ever thinks about that. They think of this as being the album that has Old Days on it, but there's a lot of great Terry stuff on this album. But I'm going to talk about a James Pankow song called Brand New Love Affair Part 1 and 2. Again, Leonid Friends decided to do a cover of it, so there you go. This song is one of the most underrated Chicago songs. I like 2-part songs. It reminds me of the kind of thing that McCartney used to do in his mid-period, where he would take 2 unrelated songs and put them together into one track. Mm-hmm. And there'd be like a transition between them. That's what this song is. And it's I guess not terribly different from Dialogue Part 1 and 2, but the 2 halves of Brand New Love Affair Part 1 and 2 are very different from each other. It starts with a really soulful Terry Kath vocal, and there's this really nice Hammond playing by Robert Lamb, like really subtle, and just he plays it with a lot of finesse. And the string arrangements are beautiful. And the horn arrangements, the string arrangements are super lush in it. And so it's this real sweet, tender song. The first half of it, which is Terry Kath talking about, maybe he, his relationship's gone bad and maybe he should do something to try to save it. And then there's this really abrupt transition, and it turns into this like rock song. And you get Peter Cetera singing this really great, kind of gruff sounding rock vocal. People don't necessarily remember so much that Peter had a rock and roll voice as well as a ballad voice. Mm-hmm. And Peter's just basically talking about, yeah, let's do it. Let's start over. And it's just very, very upbeat and very positive. And there's this great screaming like wah-wah guitar behind the horn arrangement. The horn arrangement at the end is really great. And it ends with these really great drum fills, and it's just a great song. Again, super unique structure. The whole thing from beginning to end is just like not anything like you've ever heard. And it's just a great song.
Excellent. Daddy Bog came through. Redwood was the band that Danny Hutton was in. And they
there you go.
Darlin. So there you go. Air Rock.
Oh yeah, Hideaway's
Hideaway,
great. Yeah.
their heaviest or hard rocking song.
Yes.
Cass smokes on that one.
Yes, he does.
Chicago 8, underrated gem. Not the Harry Truman
Yes.
song, no.
Agreed.
Well, DC, yeah. Yeah, thanks, Daddy Bog. Thanks, everybody, for... oh, wait a minute. We got D-Rockers number one. Number one, Beginnings off Chicago Transit Authority. Can never get enough. I agree. It's a good one. All right, Dave, you're up. What's your next one?
Song, I believe, if you're talking about the absolute greatest rock ballad of all time, this one would have to be shortlisted into at least maybe the top 5. Their only song to ever win a Grammy, If You Leave Me Now. It was the first time they had a number 1 song. The band did not want to record the song. They hated the song. Peter Cetera insisted they do the song, and it ended up being their first number 1. This is another one. I mean, pretty much all these songs I pretty much would say this for, but it's one of those songs I would never touch the radio button if it ever comes on. It's everything about this song is done to perfection. I mean, it's just produced so extremely well. Cetera's vocals are just spot on. I mean, they always are, but I'm not surprised it was if they were to have one Grammy, and they should have more than one in my opinion. It does make a lot of sense to me. This would be the one.
So was this the point in time where everything kind of turned, where Pete Cetera had more of an upper hand because of the hit? And why did the band not want to record this? Just curious as either one of you know.
My understanding was that they saw themselves as a rock band, and even though they had done, and then Todd, tell me if I'm wrong, but this is the way I remember the story being. They saw it as taking themselves to this other level that they just didn't want. They had already done "Wishing You Were Here," I believe, by this point, but I think that this one they just saw it as like just really kind of going down that. And they didn't want to go to this level. I don't think
they didn't like this.
Of a love song.
They didn't like the strings. They didn't like that there was no horn arrangement. Although there might be horns on it, I'm not sure. But they just didn't like. They just didn't like the whole feel of the song. I don't think. I
when
think
it's not live, there were horns there. I mean, as a matter of fact, that was the surprising part. Now, I don't know if it's funny. I listened to it and that was kind of the surprising thing when I saw it live, because I remember that I saw, they actually you could clearly see like the brass section going, and think, and then it sounded even better live when I saw.
I'm sure,
because that was accentuated more. So,
but I mean, the thing about Peter Cetera becoming more of having more songs on the records, he was turning into a really good songwriter.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at some of the other songs on Chicago 10, some of them are not really that great. And so I think that this song really helps Chicago 10.
So do you think that Peter Cetera just was growing by leaps and bounds as a songwriter? And he just got to that point where you couldn't, what are you going to do? You have to embrace it as a band. And if he can churn out great tracks, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I don't know. He just came to his own, I guess. The only thing I can say.
We talk about them only having one Grammy for this song. I had family in this weekend, so I took them down to the Rock Hall, and we were like looking, and what really Chicago was only like inducted just a couple of years ago. I actually did know that. I was wondering what took them so long, but somehow I think this band,
Rolling Stone didn't like them, probably.
Yeah.
They didn't. They never gave them good review, other than the really early stuff. Everything else was always slammed. So that's why.
But I don't know. I mean, I think I saw it was 2019 or something like that. But I do remember, like, I kept looking every year. Why is Chicago not in the Rock Hall? Like that's
I think it's 2014 or 2015, something like that.
No, I think I was just there. It was later than that, I believe.
That they were inducted.
Yeah, it was. I in fact, like, I moved there, and I moved to Cleveland in 2019. I think it was while I was living there so. I think it was around there, Todd. So maybe maybe someone out there can fact check this for me. But anyway, we were both like, "What?
Too late.
What is this?"
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, please give a thumbs up. By the way. All right.
Okay,
Todd, you're up.
You ready?
Yeah,
okay,
I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Number 2, I'm gonna make Well, hopefully I won't make anybody angry with this one. Okay. Street Player. One of their best songs, written by Danny Serafine and David Hochwalinsky, I believe from Rufus. Chicago's disco song. But it's a really good song. It's so much more than that. It's got an exceptional vocal melody. It's been sampled and turned into club hits. And I saw them in like the early 2000s, and they actually put it back in the set list because it was getting, people were sampling it for like dance tracks. I got to mention Maynard Ferguson. I intended to bring over some Maynard Ferguson CDs so I could talk about Maynard Ferguson because I'm a huge fan of Maynard Ferguson. Anybody who doesn't know who he is, he's known for having a big hit single with the theme from Rocky, where he's a stratospheric trumpet player who plays the trumpet in very high register. But he's way more than that. He's been making albums. He had been making albums. He passed away, but he had been making albums since the early 50s. He's got a whole 50s period. He's got a whole 60s period. He's got a whole 70s period and beyond. And he's on this playing a screechy, loud, high trumpet solo, and it's spectacular. But they also, James Penko wrote him into the horn arrangement. So the horn arrangement on Street Player has this high register trumpet that their horn arrangements don't usually have. And it's super cool. The guitar is the rhythm guitar is kind of a disco guitar sound, but Donnie plays it really well and it's really good. Peter sings falsetto in it, which is something that he doesn't do very often. I already mentioned Maynard Ferguson's solo. It's got a percussion break in the middle of it, kind of like the beginnings does at the end, like a Latin percussion break. And then it's got this horn arrangement that's just great. It just totally it just showcases the horns. Mm-hmm. And then it's got, it's Robert's piano comes in and it really it's Robert's signature piano sound, and it's followed by what I think is an excellent guitar solo. Donnie Dake has had really great tone, and I think he was a really good player. And then of course you almost sort of have to laugh towards the end where they go Street Player, yeah, woo. But it's fun and great energy, really well played, really great solos. It's 9 minutes and 11 seconds, for God's sakes. Street Player is great. And I apologize to no one for thinking that.
Well, if the Street Player, what'd you say, it's 9 minutes?
9 minutes and 11 seconds.
What about the 12-inch mix?
Oh, that's even longer. I'm pretty sure.
Wow. I like that era when the I have no problem whatsoever saying I like songs like that one, and when Paul McCartney did Good Night Tonight and Kissed It I Was Made for Loving You. I liked when those rock groups dipped their toe into the disco era. No problem with, I have no issue with that. There's some great songs there.
Yeah.
Wow. Holy crap.
Actually, there's a fun, I don't know if you guys saw Detroit Rock City, but there's a funny scene where the Kiss fans are they're driving in the car and they're going, Kiss will never ever go into and start doing disco music. I can't remember who they're listening to.
What though? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, but it's tongue-in-cheek humor because when you're watching it, if you know Kiss, you know that they had a huge hit with "I Was Made for Loving You," but it was supposed to be
and much like Street Player, great song.
Yeah.
I Was Made for Loving You is a great song.
You have to admit, it's catchy. Well, it was a hit. All right, Dave, we're ready for your number one.
All right, so Todd, you don't have to feel bad about cheating for dialogue part 1 and part 2 because I'm keeping here big time. I decided to go for the series of song on Chicago 2 because a lot of people are probably saying, when the heck is he going to get to Chicago 2, their greatest album? I got you because it's number 1. I really kind of thought, so can I really do this? Yes, I can. And here's why. I think if you're somebody coming from outer space and you want to know what is the band Chicago all about, I know that I have, some of the songs, but when I think of Chicago, I think of that big band song with the horns and the piano and mixing all that. And to really get a feel for what that's all about, that whole series of song and Ballet for a Girl in Buchanan, it hits everything. You've got like some great vocals. You've got some. You've got it's mixed in with some 1.5 2-minute instrumental songs, and I promised everybody lots of Terry Kath. Well, this series of songs is all Terry Kath because it's got "Make Me Smile" and it's got "Color My World." Truthfully, Make Me Smile would definitely be in my top 10 individually. Color My World, I think, would fall just short, but I'd have a hard time leaving that one out because it was the first Chicago song I really remember. And this was actually written by James Pankow. And the interesting thing about this he really wrote this because he was trying to woo a woman back into his life. So this series of songs has actually meant something to him. Mm-hmm. And you get to hear again the late great Terry Kath. So yeah, I think if you're gonna pick one song to say what is Chicago all about, I go with this series of songs. And again, same thing. If I'm if we were to ever do a show about my top 10 Rush, I would just take all of side 1 of 2112 and it would be in there somewhere. So I kind of look at this the same thing. The thing that's bugging me here is that to me, Wake Up Sunshine is part of this, but it's not really part of the series. So it's omitted. But to me, that whole side 2 of that album is it all kind of just flows together so nicely, and I think it's my favorite thing that they've done.
Yeah, and not only is it I've been talking a lot about songs that have unique structures, but not only is that whole suite of songs just such a creative thing in how they change from song to song, but it even where it sits on the side, like there's a song before it starts, even that is unique and weird and cool. So yeah, I think it's really great.
Cool. Excellent. Let's see if I can get a graphic up. Come on, do it. Might not do it.
Huh?
Well, no, it just did a thumbs up. Well, that's not what I wanted. I want to do the fireworks and stuff, but
All right.
All right. Excellent, Dave. That's a good choice. Todd, what is your number one?
My number one is from this album. I'll show the front of it this time. And it's number one, track number one, Introduction.
That's a great choice.
That did not used to be my favorite song from this album. My favorite song from this album used to be either Beginnings or Questions 67 and 68. But Introduction, written by Terry Kath, it's the craziest first song by any band, I think, ever. So much happens during this song. And first of all, the band is introducing themselves, which I'm sure probably other bands tried to do that, but I don't think anybody's ever done it as well as Chicago. We've all spent years preparing. We're a little nervous talking about, what it's like to have the first song on their first album. Absolutely wicked bass playing by Peter Cetera. It changes time signatures a whole bunch of times. There's a waltz section. There's a rockin' trombone solo, words that you wouldn't think anybody would ever say, followed by an abrupt tempo change and then a mellow trumpet solo. And then the tempo picks up kind of gradually. It gets faster and faster. And then there's this just absolutely on fire Terry Kath guitar solo. Just absolutely on fire. And then it's followed by more wicked horn arrangement. And then the ending of it is just super, super crazy and cool. So I can't say enough good things about this song. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. But Introduction, holy cow. If you've never heard this song, if you've only heard like Beginnings and does anybody know what time it is from this album? Man, Introduction is something else.
I was listening to that song today. Actually, I had to drive up to Dayton today, and I was actually listening to that. I was thinking, boy, this is one great song. So it's I'm glad that's on your list because that definitely would be on my honorable mentions.
Last time I saw Chicago, they did the entire ballet for a girl.
I've seen them do that a couple of times. Yeah, it's really cool when they do that.
Did they? Yeah, did they do Wake Up Sunshine too? I wonder if they. I've seen that on YouTube where they do Wake Up Sunshine and then they actually go into.
Oh, before it starts. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember whether they've done that when I saw them.
Well, gentlemen, before we wrap this up, do you have any honorable mentions you'd like to go through real quick?
Dave, you want to go first? Do you have any?
Well, yeah. Well, the one that was there was a couple of the most eye-popping one that didn't make this list. Well, there was two actually. One was Question 67 and 68, and it's not on either of our lists because maybe their greatest rock song, 25 or 624.
Yeah,
And
those two are just bubbling under for me.
Yeah,
I thought
exactly.
maybe you didn't choose them because they played them so much back in the day. No,
I think that you're onto something there, Grant. I think what caused me not to put it on is I think it's been overplayed in my life, and I think it's just there's something, I don't know, took the special out of it or something. But hey, it's an outstanding track. But anyway, so question 67, 68. Certainly Saturday in the Park is another great song. Along Comes a Woman in the early 80s is another one that stands out to me that was a fantastic song. So there's a few.
Well,
over to you, Grant.
I was going to say something. I just noticed that no one chose anything from Chicago 6.
I like Chicago 6 a lot.
Is that call on me?
Feeling Stronger Every Day. No one even mentioned that?
That's in my honorable mentions. You want me to go through them real quick?
Go through them.
And then we can talk about what the ones that we didn't pick.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's some of those.
Yeah.
So I have 10 honorable mentions. I'm going to go through them really fast. Okay, first one on my honorable mention list is 25 or 64. I didn't pick it. It should be on the list because of the strength of the guitar solo alone. But I actually think the best thing about it is the guitar solo, and that's why I didn't put it. Love Me Tomorrow. I think is my favorite song from that 82 through 84 era of Chicago. I think it's a really beautiful song. I didn't pick it because I have a real problem with that not being Robert Lamb playing the piano, that not being Peter Cetera playing the bass, that not being Danny Serafine playing the drums. So I couldn't put it in a top 10. But It Better End Soon, third movement from Chicago 2. Man, one of the best anti-war songs of all time. Poem 58, it's been mentioned in the comments a whole bunch of times. Some great playing, really interesting arrangement. A Hit by Beret shocked me that it didn't make my top 10. It's the first song on Chicago 5, pretty much just straight jazz. Just when I was in high school, I was all over that song. Feeling Stronger Every Day from Chicago 6, which we were just talking about. What Kind of Man Would I Be? From later period, which is a Jason Sheff ballad, but I think it's a really good one. I think he was a pretty good songwriter, and I kind of want to give him his due. Alive Again, and then a song that nobody ever talks about from Chicago 13, Life Is What It Is, written by the percussionist Ladir de Oliveira, I believe is how you say his name. So yeah, those are my honorable mentions.
Holy crap.
Grant, I don't think I want to let you off the hook. I want you to at least name your top 3 or something.
Okay. For one, okay. Well, I do like Feeling Stronger Every Day. Love it. And I do love my top 3. Oh God. I'm going to have to go with question 67 and 68. I like Beginnings. Shit, I love that first record a lot. Yeah. There was something off that second album. Oh, I hate. Make Me Smile, Color My World. Holy crap, I love that. That takes me back to like elementary school because I remember they used to like play that. The music teacher would come in and she would play that. Believe it or not, I don't know. It sticks in my mind. I love that. And 25 or 624, I think, is brilliant. They had a lot of great, brilliant stuff, a lot of great singles. You can't beat it.
I do think, like, if I'm saying to someone, what album should I buy? I would say it would be either one or two, either Chicago Transit or Authority or Chicago 2, in terms of, like, for me anyway, like, when those are the two that I really know, like, most of the songs. I know the deep tracks and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So, those are in terms of overall albums, and then it's, for me anyway, it just starts becoming like the songs started coming up and the individual songs, and I have a number of compilation CDs and things like that.
So real quick before we wrap this up, if someone's getting into Chicago, and I can't believe someone, well, maybe some people, I don't know, would you recommend getting a comp first, or would you just dive into those first 2 albums?
2.
You just dive into those.
Yeah, I would go to 2, or the first one actually.
I would say either the first one or, I mean, I'd like to 2 has some flaws. It doesn't sound very good. But either the first one or the 5th one,
Okay.
or a comp. It's kind of a 3-way tie. That's a really good question.
Yeah. I'm just curious what you. Now I'm all worked up on Chicago, and guess what I'm going to play tonight? DC, Color My World, #1 prom theme of the 70s. DC, do you have any stories about that at the prom?
Give him a minute to answer that.
Yeah, I'm sure he has something. Thanks for the show, guys. It's going to make me go back and listen to a bunch of Chicago. You're welcome,
Cool.
Chuck. Thanks for showing up. The first 4 should be mandatory homework assignment. Well, I can't argue with that. You know, what was on Chicago 3 that was big?
The singles on Chicago 3. This was on the Contrarians trivia last night, and I got it right. Lowdown and Free were the 2 singles.
All right. See, I don't remember. Probably if I heard them, I'd remember.
They're
that.
lesser singles, definitely,
Right.
by Chicago.
There's been on some Beach Boy shows, Beach Boys Basement, and Rachel a few times. All right. All right, Ernesto, thanks. All right, everybody, we're already an hour 20 into this dog. We're going to wind it down. I want to thank everybody for showing up and sticking with us for this discussion. Make some more comments on what you like. You know, please like, subscribe. There's going to be much more in the pipeline. And I do want to mention tomorrow at 7 p.m. on the Contrarians live chat. Todd Evans will be there. Martin will be back. Todd, remind me, I got to work on that show tonight.
Oh,
what's our topic?
It is, it has a title, and it's a really cool title. I don't remember the title, but it's basically album covers that look like cartoons.
Right. So think about that. I want to see everybody over there tomorrow night at 7 in the chat. So think of this. Album covers that look like cartoons. So that's what we're going to be talking about. 7 o'clock on the Contrarian. So be there or be square. All right. Todd, Dave, nice to see you tonight. Thanks for doing this. And everybody in the chat, have a great night, and we'll see you later. All right. Good night, everybody.